Considering that orangutans are predominantly arboreal and diverged from the rest of the great apes around 15 to 20 million years ago, it is unsurprising that there are some significant physiological differences between us and them. But what we do share with the orangutan is a great deal of complexity in both social structure and communication capacity. The species as a whole is generally described as solitary but social, with the Bornean orangutans generally being more solitary than their Sumatran counterparts. And most social bonds occur between adult females and their dependent or weaned offspring. Males are generally less inclined to engage in social behaviour. However, both resident and transient orangutans will congregate on large fruiting trees to feed. As the fruit tends to be abundant, competition is low, and individuals may engage in social interactions. And if food reserves in an area are depleted, groups will form with members travelling between different food sources. At this point, not very long ago, many documentaries would cut away to talk about another species, or, in a pinch perhaps, would continue to use carefully cut footage to ensure that the watcher was given the illusion that the film crew had managed to find a population of several dozen orangutans out of the 100,000 or so left in the wild across the entirety of Borneo, an area of 750,000 square kilometres or so. We feel that this practice is at best disingenuous and at worst a profound disservice to both the challenges faced by the orangutan in the wild and the people who put in vast amounts of hard work to try and protect these critically endangered animals. One such group and location is the Sepilok Orangutan Rehabilitation Centre within the Kabili Sepilok Forest Reserve. The reserve covers an area of about 10,000 acres, or 43 square kilometres, most of which is virgin rainforest, and is home to between 60 and 80 orangutans living free within the reserve. The centre itself is specifically focused on caring for currently around 25 orphaned orangutans, and making every effort throughout their development to ensure that the young orangs are eventually able to return to the forest on their own. Indeed, the reserve as a whole, whilst protected, is open to the outside world, and transient orangs do occasionally pass through, along with a number of other species, which, while we were exploring the reserve, did seem to include an elephant that could be heard crashing through the undergrowth and calling periodically. Normally, we would consider it unfortunate that we weren't able to find the individual or individuals making the noise. However, given the close confines of the jungle, we're actually quite glad of the fact that we weren't surprised by an elephant in close proximity. Once infant orangs at the sanctuary are weaned, they are paired up with an older and more experienced orang to minimise their contact with humans and thus aid their rehabilitation. The older orang is then able to pass on vital skills in much the same way that the mother would in the wild. Juvenile orangs going through the rehabilitation process, in addition to the food that is available to them in their local environment, have their diet supplemented with milk and bananas. These additional foodstuffs are deliberately bland and monotonous, as well as being delivered sporadically, in order to encourage the juvenile orangs to forage for themselves. Over recent decades, continuing research has been done into the distribution of the orangutan, and in 1996 the species was separated into two distinct groups, the Bornean species and the Sumatran species. Then in 2017, a third species was identified, again in Sumatra, but being distinct from the main population. All three species are considered to be critically endangered. There are estimated to be fewer than 800 Tapanuli orangutans, the most recently identified species, left anywhere in the world, and studies in 2016 estimate that there are fewer than 15,000 Sumatran orangutans remaining. The Bornean orangutan on the surface appears to be faring a great deal better, with an estimated population over 100,000 at this stage. However, this is estimated to have fallen from over 250,000 in 1999, which highlights why organisations such as the Sepilok Orangutan Rehabilitation Centre is so incredibly important. Human activities threaten every wild population of orangutans. Logging and mining, forest clearance for palm plantations, as well as urban sprawl and the construction of roads, all further degrade and erode their habitats of rainforest. The species are also hunted for bushmeat, as well as being poached in retaliation for crop destruction. The Sepilok Orangutan Rehabilitation Centre is of course open to visitors, both national and international, and we were initially concerned that this was a zoo by any other name. Thankfully, every effort is made to keep the visiting humans separate from the orangutans, and with the exception of the highly trained staff, nobody interacts with the juveniles. It must be said, however, that the walkways out to the rehabilitation centre are open to the forest, through which the orangutans are free roaming. While the humans are reminded at every available opportunity that they are not to interact with the orangs, occasionally the orangs themselves seem uninterested in this restriction, shall we say. For example, this juvenile male was following a group around the forest walkways and occasionally made threatening displays towards them, which really does just go to show that certain aspects of being a teenager are pretty much universal. Others, like this individual, have observed humans walking around and have, for reasons best left unknown, decided to mimic the behaviour. Finally, as you can see here, this area truly is open to the wild. The reserve is also home to several troops of pig-tailed macaque, who do not find it beneath themselves to partake of the food provided by humans for the orangutans. Given that the orangs themselves seem quite happy to share, there doesn't seem to be any particular problem.